Good evening, everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you here today to the observance of the first International Day of the Girl Child. The theme globally is on child marriage, but given the situation in Jamaica, we felt that what we really wanted to talk to everybody about and what we really wanted to hear from everybody about was issues related to, experience related to the sexual violence that has been in the news a lot. I'm going to welcome everybody, and I'd like to say all protocol observed because I don't want to go through a whole list of who is here. You will all be hearing them in any case. And I think each one of you is as important as the people who sit here and talk as well. So what we'd really like to do is for this to be the first in a series of conversations and discussions, because this is an issue we all need to talk about more so that we can all understand what's happening better and understand how we can find solutions to this. So again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and I'd like to really ask everyone to please contribute to the discussion as well. I'd also like to thank very much our panelists who have here to share their special expertise with us, and welcome, and I look forward to the evening being a productive and a learning experience for all of us. Thank you.
UNFPA, that is, we're putting on this forum in association with the Ministry of Youth and Culture. And I'd like to invite to the podium at this time Mr. Greig Smith, who is the Registrar of the Office of the Children's Registry, and he will be bringing greetings on behalf of the ministry. Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the head table dignitaries. The Office of the Children's Registry is pleased to support the first observance of the International Day for the Girl Child. The United Nations Population Fund and its partners responsible for hosting this public event must be commended for the effort in raising awareness about issues that affect girls and seek to find solutions to these issues. As a statutory body under the Ministry of Youth and Culture, the OCR has been asked to bring greetings on behalf of the Minister of Youth and Culture, the Honorable Lisa Hanna, who is unable to attend this evening. The government has repeatedly stated, particularly through the Minister of Youth and Culture, that eradicating the scourge of child abuse is a top priority issue that is pursuit of child protection and development, being done in the context of its commitment in achieving the Millennium Development Goals. Over the past 4 years, we have collected over 25,000 reports of child abuse between the period 2007 and 2011. Of this figures, 14,465, which is 58.7%, or approximately 6 in every 10 were about girls. For the period January to June 2012, the OCR received 4,499 reports, representing an increase of 11.4% over the corresponding period 2011. Of the reports received over the period, 3,773 represent children who were being reported for the first time. Of this number, 59.3% were girls. 39.5% were boys, while the gender for the remaining 1.2% was not specified. While the data indicate a welcome improvement in the incidence and culture of reporting, it also tells us that something is wrong in our society and that relates to the child abuse. For even as we continue to receive increased reports, there is still a significant number of reports which go unreported, and so many children, including girls, continue to suffer in silence. The recent incident in which an 11-year-old was impregnated by her granduncle is but one of the many examples of this fact. It is therefore important that persons continue to break the silence so that our children, especially our girls who seem to be more affected by this scourge of child abuse receive the intervention they need. It is important to note, according to Section 6, subsection 4 of the Child Care and Protection Act, persons having information of suspected or known of child abuse and fail to make a report to the registry shall be liable upon a summary conviction before a resident magistrate to a fine not exceeding 500,000 or imprisonment for 6 months or both. In addition, persons making report which upon investigation is proven to be false cannot be sued if the report was generally made in good faith. Reports received by the registry is treated with the strictest of confidence. In devising and implementing strategies to prevent child abuse and to ensure its reporting, referral, and investigation, the OCR collaborates with several ministries and state agencies. These include the Ministry of Justice, the Child Development Agency, the Office of the Children's Advocate, and the Center for Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse. The Registry continues to build on its system and programs to improve efficiency and effectiveness in implementing its mandate. To coincide with the observance of our 5th year of operation early this year, the OCR launched 2 child participation programs, which seeks to get children involved in reporting cases of abuse against them. We at the OCR remain committed in collaborating with civil society, international development partners, and with every individual, group, and sector generally committed to the work and cause in protecting Jamaican's children. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's discussion. She is Mrs. Donna Parchment Brown. She's an attorney at law, mediator, trainer, and a founding member of the Dispute Resolution Foundation, the DRF. She has been its CEO since 1994, when the organization was founded. She has helped to design policy and support delivery of mediation training to the business community, to lawyers, women's organizations, the government of Jamaica, the police, and for the courts of Jamaica. And she has also worked in several underserved urban communities in Jamaica and throughout the region. She's a member of the Jamaican Bar Association and is deputy chairman of the Peace Management Initiative and a member of the boards of the United Way of Jamaica and the Violence Prevention Alliance. In 2004, she was awarded the national honor of Commander of the Order of Distinction for her contribution in the field of dispute resolution and community service. I say all of this to say she's eminently qualified to lead us in this discussion on this very important topic. So again, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Mrs. Donna Parchment Brown.
Thank you very much, Althea, for your introduction. It's such an honor for me to have been asked to moderate this forum, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, though sorry for the need. I would like to join in welcoming everyone here. It's such an important topic on such an important day, the inaugural International Day of the Girl Child, to be observed today, and we're fortunate to be part of the recognition of this event today. Let me congratulate UNFPA, the Ministry of Youth and Culture, and all the partners for deciding to do this and for all the work you do every day around these and related issues. This afternoon, what we hope to do, or we're perhaps in the evening now, the topic, of course, is ending impunity for sexual violence, breaking the silence. And if you look at your programs, you will see there are a number of outcomes indicated on the cover of the program. And these will involve us doing some level of evaluation, hoping our discussion will promote certain ideas and practices, and at the end, that you may feel it possible for us to make some commitment towards some joint action as stakeholders in this concern, as well as to make commitment to provide leadership in efforts to end gender-based violence. And these are large responsibilities to commit to, but we must commit if we are to indeed break the silence and create a country in which everyone can fulfill their potential. Now, as you will have seen from the program, this evening's discussion is broken into segments. So in the first segment, the panelists who are seated at the table will make 3-minute presentations. So each person will speak for 3 minutes. And I don't mind having timekeepers who raise their hands at 3 minutes. It doesn't mean I'm going to obey you at 3 minutes, but I'm okay if you raise your hands. It's a big challenge for the speakers to use 3 minutes to make important points. And after that, we will have a second segment in which you will have the opportunity to ask questions of the panelists and a resource panel that I will introduce at that time. Finally, in the last segment, we will try to craft a way forward in respect of ending impunity for sexual violence. And we will look at this from the perspective of the government, meaning the actors such as the police, prosecutors, courts, and other state actors, some of whom are present, from civil society, and from the individual and community. There are a number of challenges we'll look at, but later on in the program I will bring those to your attention. It is my pleasure, therefore, now to introduce persons who are experts in their field and who will help to enlighten us and enrich our own knowledge of these topics. First, we will have Mrs. Faith Webster. Faith Webster is the Executive Director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, and she will speak to us on the topic gender-based violence, dimensions of the problem. And we know this could be a 3-hour presentation. So 3 minutes of pithy points that we will be able to use to help us to do this work. Faith is a very well-respected practitioner in the field of gender equality and women's empowerment. Please welcome her.
Thank you, Donna, and good evening again, everyone, distinguished guests all. It's a privilege to be here this evening and to be at this session when we recognize the first International Day for the Girl Child, and to thank UNFPA for really hosting this forum tonight. I'm going to really have to be Speedy Gonzalez this evening to get through in 3 minutes. You will see where attention was first drawn to giving recognition of the girl child at the 4th World Conference on Women, Beijing, China in 1995. The girl child was listed as one of the 12 of critical areas of concern, and as well as violence against women. And the question has always been asked, why a specific focus on the girl child? The Beijing Platform for Action highlights some of the following reasons. The data in many countries indicate that the girl child is discriminated against from the earliest stages of life through her childhood and into adulthood. In some areas of the world, men outnumber women by 5 in every 100. Some reasons also for this discrepancy will include female genital mutilation, harmful attitudes and practices, such as son preference. We may not have some of these things here in Jamaica, but we have our own peculiarities. But just to show you what's happening at the global level, resulting in female infanticide and prenatal sex selection, early marriage, including child marriage, violence against women, sexual exploitation, sexual abuse, discrimination against girls in food, and other practices related to health and well-being. And even some of us in Jamaica, in the Jamaican context, we would remember even growing up too, in terms of food, you know, the men had to get the bigger portion, the chicken leg and all of that and so forth. We know that, but in other countries too, we would also know that even at a time too in Jamaica, there was preference given to boys going to school and not girls. You know, well, it's good now that that has changed. Sexual violence and sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV and AIDS, have a devastating effect on children's health, and girls are more vulnerable than boys to the consequences of unprotected sex, and we know the statistics, some of us, particularly our girls in the 15 to 19 age group, are more vulnerable to HIV and AIDS and premature sexual relations, transactional sex, and the like. Girls often face pressures to engage in sexual activity. Issues related to their youth, social pressures, negative stereotypes of girls and women in the media and otherwise, a lack of or gaps in legislation also contribute to their vulnerability to all kinds of violence, particularly sexual violence, which includes rape, incest and carnal abuse, sexual exploitation, trafficking, sexual harassment, and sometimes even the sale of their organs and tissues. That may not happen in Jamaica, but as I say, these are some of the things that's happening globally. The Economist of March 6 to 12, 2010, in an article on gendercide, it said, what happened to 100 million baby girls? The article spoke to girls that were killed, they were aborted or neglected, indicating that at least 100 million girls have disappeared, and the numbers is rising. Sexual violence in any form, whether it be rape, incest, or carnal abuse, is a violation of a girl's human or a woman's human rights and cannot be condoned. Many schoolgirls are victims of gang rape. Gang rape is an act of terrorism being used on women and girls in troubled communities as reprisals. And this all has to do with the issue of power and control, and to send messages to people in communities as to who is in control and as to who run things. Women and girls located within the middle and upper strata of society, they are also affected. And you'll see where organizations such as the Bureau and other women's groups, we continue with public education and sensitization programs in communities, saying that communities must take responsibility too for some of these cases of incest, rape, and carnal abuse. We have to then get rid of the nonchalant, cavalier attitude towards these crimes, and as a society, we must move towards attitudinal changes in this regard. The Bureau has developed a national policy for gender equality and a national strategic plan of action on gender-based violence. These will be used in tandem with all other regional and international documents and agreements in the fight to eradicate violence against our girls. Let us continue to work together in the fight against gender-based violence and make Jamaica a place of choice to live, work, raise our girls, and to do business. Happy International Day for the Girl Child.
Thank you very much, Faith. That was really a lot of pressure, but a lot of information shared in a short time. We'll have an opportunity to talk a bit more. I'll encourage everyone to have some note paper or write on the program if you have a question or comment. Start to write them down now so that you're able to do what is required later on. Let me now invite Mr. Noel Stennett, Regional Director for the Southeast Region of the Child Development Agency, to share with us his breadth of knowledge and experience. Again, we're looking at 3 minutes, and so we'll try not to pressure the speakers too much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor to have been asked to make a presentation to this meeting, and I trust that as we reason together, we will indeed come to some solutions. Before I begin, I would want to just introduce a member of the Children's Advisory Panel to the CDA, a very important group of youngsters who have been meeting, and they are seeking to give us the benefit of their knowledge and expertise in regard to children's matters so that we can be focused. Could I ask Miss Nisha Gay Francis to just stand for a moment? Could we just give her a welcoming round of applause? I was somewhat amazed to see the statistics on our neighbors to the north, the Bahamas, where I'm told that there are some 133 rapes per 100,000 persons in the islands. Jamaica has the dubious distinction of being somewhat less at 51, I think, per 100,000. But when you think of the little islands of the Bahamas having such a huge number of rapes, it makes one stop, balk. The topic that I've been asked to share on is the impact of violence on children and adolescents. It allows me the liberty to speak of violence, both sexual and physical, and I'm going to try and do a little bit of that. Thanks to Mr. Smith for having introduced us to that very important section of the Child Care and Protection Act, Section 6, which tells us that we all have a responsibility, all of us have a responsibility if we know, have heard of, or suspect that a child has been abandoned, neglected, physically or sexually ill-treated, or otherwise in need of care and protection. We all have a responsibility to report it to the Office of the Children's Registry and to make some noise. Section 9 also provides us with some very important definitions, and let me just highlight a couple of things. A person commits an offense, the law says, if that person, being an adult and having the custody, charge, or care of any child, willfully assaults, physically or mentally ill-treats, neglects, abandons, or exposes such a child, or causes or procures the child to be assaulted, physically or mentally ill-treated, neglected, abandoned, or exposed, in a manner likely to cause unnecessary suffering or injury to health. Let me stop there. In a manner likely to cause unnecessary suffering or injury to health. What does that mean? What does that mean? There's a saying in the Bible about the rod and the child. I would like us to just look at the child part. If we drop out the rod, we're left with, do not spoil the child. Do not spoil the child. What typically happens in some families, I remember in my own youthful days, seeing a parent come to school and the child had done something a little untoward, and the parent was embarrassed and the parent was furious that the child had done this, and she immediately took hold of the child. It was in front of the assembly, took hold of the child and lit into the child, flayed him good and proper. Beatings, sometimes, I mean, I've heard of it. People sometimes speak of grandmother who would, anything she got hold of, she would throw it at the child if the child was out of order. She'd throw a stone even at the child. And, well, it might have developed some skills in dodging, but I'm sure it also connected and did some damage. I've also come across instances where parents and older children would take a stick, maybe even something as big as a 2x4, and wave it around at that child. And the intention isn't to just frighten the child, but it would sometimes connect in the head. It would sometimes connect in the head, and you wonder what is the outcome of something like that, where a child receives a blow in the head once or twice or 3 times. How does that affect the child's development? And then, of course, there is the matter of sexual predatory behavior, where any kind of sexual stimulation or sexual contact with a child is outlawed and just ought not to happen. What's the effect of those kinds of behavior on the child? It spoils the child. It spoils the child. Whether you hit him over the head or you rape the child, it spoils the child's future. And so the child is robbed of innocence. The child who should grow up to, go through a stage of enjoyment and play and exploration of the world becomes a child who is no longer trusting, is no longer innocent, is no longer willing to explore. but becomes confused, becomes shaken in terms of his trust of adults and others around him or her. Her self-esteem is wounded. She wonders who she is and what she is and does she have value. And there is a sense of self-loathing so often accompanying these traumatic acts. A child who suffers in that way not only has these emotional responses, but there are certain other outworkings. There is that's 0. Time up. Would you permit me a couple of zeros? 30 seconds. The cycle of violence continues. There is the acting out. There are antisocial behaviors. There is the sense of being out of place. Child frequently runs away, and it oftentimes leads to behavioral issues and even to mental issues, psychotic behaviors. These are behaviors that we're seeing often enough in the children's homes, where children come to us having been abused, and these are some of the issues then that I think we have to confront as well-thinking citizens if indeed we want to avoid this issue of spoiling our children. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust I'll have the opportunity to dialogue with you a bit longer in the open section. On behalf of the CDA, thank you for the opportunity of sharing these 3 minutes.
Thank you, Noel. Thanks very much for focusing on spoiling the child by the things that we traditionally say you are to do to prevent the child from being spoiled. So we appreciate that very much. I'm pleased to invite Taitu Heron, lecturer in the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, the Regional Coordinating Unit of UII at Mona. Her topic this evening will be the relationship between gender and violence against women. And we look forward to an information-filled 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My topic is slightly different from what's in the program. It's actually called The Nexus Between Gender and Violence. The nexus between gender and violence, even though the data reporting in the policymaking process starts at about just after the post-independence era, is not a contemporary one, particularly sexual violence. So while the official data would suggest that, I would like to suggest that the culture of violence that we live now was cultivated on the plantation, where there was wanton use and abuse of the body, both physically, sexually, and psychologically. Part of the unfortunate job of a mother was to prepare her young daughter for the likelihood of rape. Part of the unfortunate job of a father was to prepare his young son that he would have to impregnate a woman, not by choice, but because the plantation labor required it. I raise this first as a point of departure because today, as some of you would know, is the 11th of October, the anniversary of the Morant Bay Rebellion. And at this rebellion, over 400 participants, including women and men, were executed after fighting for land rights and for enfranchisement. And where we have, based on Clinton Hutton's thesis, we have found out that rape was used as a weapon of war for women who refused to expose the locations of their husbands, partners, and young boys, who were fighting, of course, during the rebellion. So Jamaica's subjection to violence and the projection of violence is centuries old. This production of violence is based on a particular acceptance of a model of power which subscribes to the idea of power over someone in an authoritative and hierarchical sense, rather than power with someone in a cooperative sense. This acceptance of power translates into relations determined by hierarchy, discrimination, exploitation, and social disregard. This, I think, we have not really made a psychic split from. Gender and violence is connected by how we understand and express this definition of power, be it authoritarian, aggressive, passive, non-compliant, or compliant. We accept ourselves as powerful or powerless, and this is determined by our sense of self, or religious socialization, or exposure or non-exposure to violence, be it in the home, in schools, in communities, and from our leaders in the media, among other spaces. Based on the data, contemporarily, girl children are likely to be victims of sexual violence. If we look at the data for the cases seen in the accident and emergency hospitals across the island in 2010, 1,819 cases for children under the age of 19 years. 45 of these were boys, 774 of these were girls. While men are more likely to be the perpetrators, I think we still need to pay attention to that small number of boys, as well as girls. The data shows that in the case of rape and carnal abuse, it is usually a family member that takes advantage of this vulnerability, a family member or a friend. So this culture of silence, of devaluing the voice of a child, persists in assuming that if a child says so, he or she must be lying. A culture of grooming young girls for transactional sex, and in many cases, it is the mother who grooms the girl child. This colors the value that is placed on the handling of these cases of sexual violence in the court system. And as some of us can, if we refer to the data, there's, generally speaking, it varies from case to case or from age group to age group, but in terms of reported cases, there's an average of about a third of cases cleared up vis-a-vis those that have been reported. Boys and men are more likely to be victims of state violence, particularly by the security forces. This is also a class dimension, as it is mostly working class or the urban poor that are targets of state violence. So male-on-male aggression based on the assumed threat of young men to be gang members, though it is not always the case. So we must break this cycle of male-on-male aggression. Gender socialization plays a role in how we receive an act of violence. As girls and boys, toys are given to us and preen us for certain kinds of activities. And rather, it is a propensity or an expectation. Dolls, girls get dolls, tea sets, and kitchen sets. Boys get toy guns and water guns and superheroes. So we must break this cycle of not paying attention to the toys that we give our children and what we are training them to accept or not accept. It's far more complicated than this, but I think this is something that needs a lot of attention. The role of media and the media representation promotes girls as screaming defenseless victims when they are girls, and there's a transitioning towards female action heroes later on. We must therefore then be vigilant as parents. The role of media for boys shows similarly boys enacting warfare, being brave as soldiers, fighting for freedom and democracy, or fighting for drugs. Time up? Are you serious? Oh my God. I was looking at Donna and I was looking for the big zero and I didn't see it. Anyway, this is really hard. I've had 7 minutes, but 3 minutes is a new challenge. Anyway, I think we just need to stop at this point and say that what is happening here has happened before. It is just manifesting in contemporary ways. And we need to look at the connection between history and what is happening now to see how we can correct it. While the girl child is significant, I also do not think that we can leave out the boy child.
Thank you all. Thank you very much, Taitu. There's going to be a lot to discuss out of Taitu's paper, the way she's locating the conversation. So I'm going to urge you when your time comes to keep your questions and comments really short so we can get it done. And now I'm delighted to invite Claudette Thompson from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to come and make her 3-minute presentation. She promises me she will look in my direction occasionally. And her topic is access to justice for women victims of sexual violence. Welcome, Claudette.
Good evening, everyone. My topic, access to justice for women victims of sexual violence. Access to the justice system is through the police, in particular, Sissoko, Center for the Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse. Once a woman, or just about anybody, is a victim of sexual violence or child abuse, violence against women, then it is to Sissoko that the report is made. The officers, and these are police officers, officers of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, they have received special training in terms of recording the statements of the victims and if they are witnesses, and just being gentle enough to deal with them, because you will appreciate that these victims would be in a fragile state. And these are the officers who would take the victims to the hospital, or in the case of Kingston, there is actually a unit, I understand, at the Sissoko office where a doctor is usually on standby to examine the victims of sexual violence. The next group of persons, or the next institution, because we're talking about access to the justice system, after Sissoko would be those persons from the victim support unit. They would offer counseling to the victims of sexual violence. And these persons too are specially trained to treat with this kind of victimization. It is only after the report has been taken by the officers at Sissoko that the office of the DPP, or at the lower level, the clerks of court in the resident magistrates court, would become involved, because until a file is completed and is submitted to the office of the clerk or the DPP's office, prosecutors do not get involved. And it is safe to say that we come in at the tail end. In fact, we tend to rely a lot on the counselors from the victim support unit to advise us as to how ready the victim is to stand up in court and give evidence about something that is very traumatic. So that is how, and I'm looking, that is how victims are able to access the justice system. It's not a part of the topic, but whenever I get an opportunity to speak about the justice system, I have to peg. It is all well and good for us to sit and talk about access to the justice system. If we're not prepared to participate in the justice system, then there's no point to us getting together, whether once or twice or 3 times a year, having cocktails, sitting down nicely and having a discussion. Unless Jamaicans are prepared when they are summoned for court to work as jurors, unless you're prepared to come and sit through it, whether a trial goes on for 1 day or 3 weeks or 8 weeks, unless you're prepared to participate in the process, then there is no point in us getting together for this process. Where the justice system is concerned, in Kingston we have a court dedicated to the trial of these types of matters, sexual offenses in particular. And I'm pleased to say that the turnaround rate in that court is better than in any of the other courts. So we tend to be in a position to try the rapes, indecent assault, gross indecency, those are the ones committed against boys in most cases, and buggery. We're usually able to try those cases at a faster rate than we're able to try the murders and the other types of offenses. So that is encouraging. But we cannot try them if the citizens of Jamaica do not turn up for jury duty. Unless you come and are prepared to participate in the process, then there's no point in even having a justice system. I didn't come with any statistics today, but I want to add that outside of Kingston, where that went fast, can I just 20 seconds, outside of Kingston, where most of the cases are murder cases in all the other parishes, in particular St. James and St. Mary, sexual offenses against women tend to run hand in hand in terms of numbers with all the other types of offenses, and in some parishes, the sexual offenses against women outnumber all the other types of offenses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudette. We're really fortunate to have so many people with so much information to help us locate our responsibilities as Jamaicans or people living in Jamaica better, and to assist us in doing what's necessary to break this silence. Thank you, panelists, for your contribution and your cooperation. At this stage, I would like to introduce, we are now in segment 2. So I'd like to introduce members of the resource panel, and if I leave off anybody who should be here, please indicate. But I'll ask them to stand so that you can see them when their names are called. So first, Dr. Arun Kashyap, who is a resident coordinator of the UN system in Jamaica. Thank you. Then we have Mr. Robert Foderick, who is the representative for UNICEF. Dr. Claudette Crawford Brown of the Violence Prevention Program at UII. Earlier you saw Mr. Greig Smith, but I'll still invite him to stand. Registrar at the Office of the Children's Registry. Also with us is Joel Coelho Rosberg from UNFPA. Mrs. Joyce Hewitt of Woman Inc. Ms. Mika Gay Francis, who is a child representative on the advisory panel and a student at Campion. And of course, you met the panelists before. So we're now opening the floor for questions from the audience, and I invite you to ask short questions, and I invite the members to give as full an answer as is necessary.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Gaston Foreman, a retired teacher from Kingston College. Presently, I'm a private tutor. The theme for this afternoon, I notice, is for International Day of the Girl Child. And I would like to, I noticed that Miss Taitu Heron has left the...
No, she's still with us.
Anyway, I'm directing this question to her, but before I do that, I would want to make an observation that Ms. Taitu Heron made a statement that the abuse is not only pertaining to the girl child, but also the boys. And I would, that struck me very, very forcibly. And I must congratulate her to bringing that, because both genders are being abused. Anyway, Ms. Taitu Heron, I fully agree with you that the abuse started from slavery. But what I'm very concerned about now is it that we have not shaken off that shackle from that? Is it within, is it genetic? Is it, I'm really wondering, so many years have passed in slavery, and you're suggesting that that could be one of the contributors to the presently that we're facing, where we have this sort of heinous rape and what you may call it, attrition against young girls. Could you respond, please?
Thank you so much, Mr. Foreman. I'll take maybe 2 others before asking the panelists and the resource panel to respond.
Good night, everyone. Mario Rosier speaking. My question is to Ms. Heron, right? And it is, as a people and as influencers of your policy making, how do you propose we study history and use what we learn from the history to chart the path, the success towards, reducing the atrocities mentioned in your presentation?
Thank you very much, Mario. I'll take a third question.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
My name is Tanya. I'm actually a resident at Patricia House. And now my question is to Ms. Thompson. I want to know, has it been improved on the assault, rape, and abuse cases on women in St. Mary? Because I've had an experience, and when I went to the police, they they weren't very helpful, which made me not reported what was done, what had happened to me. And I feel that I'm not the only one something like that has happened to. So I want to know, has there been any improvement in it? Is there more care and concern for females who has been assaulted?
Thank you very much, Tanya. We really appreciate your raising that question. So now I'm going to first ask Taitu if she would respond, and then Claudette, and then I would open for any other member of the panel.
Thank you so much for the two questions. I raised the point about boys in two ways. The first way I was able to address, the second way I wasn't. Boys are more exposed to physical violence, and based on the data that I've seen, it's not just gunshots, but blunt injuries. For instance, in 2010, this is again cases for boys under 19, 1,428 males and 958 females. When we look at the cases for stab wounds and gunshots, the same overwhelming number for boys also exists. So what I'm really saying is that while women and girls are more vulnerable to sexual violence, boys and men are more vulnerable to physical violence. So we need to look at it in a very gendered way in terms of how we examine the use and abuse of power in both instances, as well as recognize that how we address it will also have to be gender specific. While this forum is about sexual violence, I suppose because my own stance has politically shifted in how we address gender-based violence, I can't speak about one child. I have to speak about both. So even though it may contradict with the theme, for that I apologize, but in a sense it also contradicts with my own personal politics. So I had to give voice to that. That being said, I don't have the perfect answer or even the full answer to the other question about the connection between history and contemporary times. What I do know, two things. There is a disconnect. We are not historically and culturally connected to our past based on how we are educated, and that creates a disconnect from the body and the spirit and even our emotions. That's my own sense. Having been someone who has been raised, thank you, Mommy, having raised with the historical and the cultural connection by both my parents. Then the other thing that I have noticed is how there are certain approaches. It's really the approach to power that I want us to deconstruct. And that approach to power is historical, and we have not broken from that past. And the approach to power entails, is a kind of what has been called in academic literature a master-slave dialectic, where we have a certain type of learned helplessness on the one hand, which goes on from one generation to the generation without us deconstructing it as a people. The second thing is that when we look at, and literature is there, if somebody wants to come and talk to me about it, we can do that even further, but in the post-independence, how independence unfolded, there was a deliberate erasure of what happened prior. In other words, and then years later we only started to recognize Emancipation Day, right? And I'm rambling a bit, but there are certain patterns psychologically that I have picked up. One, the idea of transactional sex, and Sean Williams, I believe, from UNICEF has done research on this. What has happened with transactional sex is historically connected. It has happened before with that kind of pattern. In other, if there's a particular mindset, it's like incest. If there's a particular mindset in one generation, if there's not a deliberate effort to break that mindset, it will persist in the next generation.
Thank you, Taitu. I think that's a
pretty much
perfect note.
Yeah. And slavery in the Caribbean ended in 1838. That is really not that long ago when you look at Christianity is 2,000 years old, to give you some perspective, okay?
Thank you so much. Claudette? Yes.
Hi, I'd like to challenge Taitu a little bit and agree with her. I'd like to just comment on the issue of history and its link to contemporary sexual violence. I would like to suggest that, yes, I agree that we have patterns that go through generations. The whole question of the planters coming down to the community and say, I want that girl tonight, has been adopted by the Don. This was taught to me at a community forum with a man from an inner city community. He said, lady, you're not right. What is happening is that the Dons and the power brokers in the communities who are the gunmen have used this exchange thing. I exchange sexual favors must be exchanged for material goods. So the bag of groceries and the gold-plated doorknob is for the whatnot. And you remember the song from Cartel. And so we are, I was educated by a historian from a community who said, yes, he's just picking up from slavery because the planters used to do the same thing. I, however, draw the line there. We will continue to have fora like these where we talk about the problems and we intellectualize and when you can use the excuse of slavery. What I'm suggesting is that contemporary Jamaican and Caribbean society must be held responsible for what is happening with our children as well. Having looked at it, we have to move. And here is what I'm suggesting. We are going to have to look at the problem from all levels. No one discipline or one agency here has the answer. We have to have an interdisciplinary perspective. We are going to have to link the home, the school, the community, and the agencies that are responsible, because I'd like to suggest that the macro level issue here as to why this continues, that gentleman asked the question, and he was kind of implicitly suggesting, Taitu, are you saying history is the answer, and there are other things? And this is part of the other things. The macro level issue has to do with the fact that the agencies that are working with this problem need to be properly managed. And I'd like to put a plug in here for the role of the professionals, particularly professional social work. Social work must work with the psychiatrists, must work with the child psychologists, must work with the teachers, etc., in an interdisciplinary way. We tend to go on radio programs and panels like this, and we focus on our own little area, and we hold up the information. Remember, somebody said something about we have a lot of information, and I wrote it down. So many people with so much information, and that's part of our problem. This problem of sexual violence and violence generally is a complex problem needing comprehensive solutions. Pauline Milburn, back in 1986, and I look young, but I am 60 years old. I have been through this for almost 30 odd years, and I'm tired of it. We need to get to a point where we look at what has happened at the parish level, and we look at the micro level solutions. What are we going to do to deal with that little lady who is talking about going to the police, and the police attitude was not what we would expect, to say the least? What do we do about the police who are actually sexually abusing one of my children, who are as case study I have in my book there, the 11-year-old, with all of the Child Care and Protection Act that UNICEF and myself and a number of people put together? We still have police who, because the child is abused by her stepfather, think she's damaged goods, and therefore with impunity abuse the child. A teacher comes to me and says, Dr. Brown, do you know that that little girl is being abused by the police? And I almost had a stroke. We have the Child Care and Protection Act. Why does this teacher come? And I asked her. She said, because I could be killed. No, those are the realities. I'm just very frank and raw. But with all of the niceties of this environment, we have to face the fact that we have serious problems on our hands. So the first thing is the macro level culture of violence around our children, and the systems that are not working by default. I'm talking about the transportation system, which still allows children to be driving down Constant Spring Road in those coaster buses, girls sitting in boys' lap, and renting out a bus and going to Castleton Gardens on a weekend.
Dr. Crawford Brown,
So
I'm going to thank you for your intervention and invite Claudette Thompson
to respond
as well.
Right.
Thank
So
you
I'm just
so
throwing
much.
these things out,
Thank
and
you
I'd love
very
to get
much.
some feedback from it.
Thank you very much.
I'm not in a position to say whether the situation has improved in St. Mary or not. But, and it is true, every now and again we hear of unfortunate occurrences when persons go to the police to make a report. But this is what I'll say to you. If you go to the police station to make a report and you're not treated the way you should be treated, there's a probation office, because a probation officer will accompany you back to the police station. There's a victim support unit as well. And if you go to them, they will assist you in going to the police station and ensuring that your report is taken. If a police officer isn't treating you the way you should be treated, there are other police officers that you can go to as well. So I'd encourage you not to give up. There are other agencies and there are other police officers. I cannot say if the situation itself has improved in St. Mary.
I wonder if any other member of the, is that a hand over there? Yes. You're from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, the police may give you a bit of difficulty when you come to report a matter, but there are other avenues, as Ms. Thompson said. You can go to the probation officer, and they are mandated to assist you. You don't just turn away. But another thing that is more important for me is really the attitude of us ordinary Jamaicans, particularly the persons who come and serve as jurors, because I hear the cry, but I'm also aware that when persons come to make that decision at the court level, the first thing you hear from the jurors themselves is that the pitney bad, so we're not sending no man to prison. So it means that we need to look at ourselves as well. So it's not only a sensitization of the police, but a realization that we are the parents of every child out there. How many persons see boys and girls walking on the street and in a compromising position and speak to them or do anything? I can assure you that myself, Ms. Thompson, and so many others in our office will speak to them and say, look, go home, so on. So it's for us to become parents to every child as well.
Thank you so much. Arun, did you have your hand up for a question or comment?
Thank you very much. You know, when I was listening to the discussion, and thank you for your comment at this time, and also Dr. Brown, what you mentioned, you know, that sometimes, actually, let me give you an example. That our Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, recently gave a statement that he was outraged at the shooting of the 14-year-old Pakistani girl, Malala Yousafzai, for standing up, empowerment of girls, and doing something about it. What I'm trying to say here is that there is a line we draw. We need to get outraged sometimes. With what happened in St. James, with what happened, you know, something Mr. Smith mentioned, somewhere there has to be an outrage, not as an outburst to do something, but to seek redress and action. Empowerment we talk about, and as the UN we mention it at every forum, but what are we going to do about it? For example, someone raised an issue, if a girl, you know, if a rape happened and the police is not helpful, that particular person is not going from police to police. One needs to understand what is happening to the person. And to do that, I totally agree with you that this is a totally different concept of citizen security that we need to look at, where all of us have to stand up and say, what is access to justice for us? How are we going to empower whatever everyone is doing? Let me give you another example. You know, we talk about history and violence in the Caribbean. If you look at the total Latin America and Caribbean region, about 8.5% of global population resides in that region. But you know what is the percentage of homicides? 27% of global homicides happen there. In El Salvador, where 3 sisters were killed, which caused, on the Women's Day, the UN to get together to say, you know, this is the time, we need to do something, and they declared it was like a cry for, or you know, you make a call requesting the government to do something on emergency measures, that you need to do something. So there are several different examples of law, what needs to happen, of community action that needs to happen. But one thing I do believe in very strongly. Now, being in Jamaica, I think I am a Jamaican, and whatever happens here does impact all of us. And that's part of the reason that when we look at all these things, that till the time we are generating a specific reaction that is going to call for action, I think we will not make the progress that we desire. Well, thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Arun. We have someone.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kamisha Kelly. I listened to the intervention from this lovely lady from the audience and the responses from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and I have to echo her sentiments. And I'm standing here and I'm battling myself as to whether or not I share my personal experience of wanting to go and report something, going to report it, and the attitude of the officers who are taking this report. And I want to know, if a report has been started, right, and you don't hear anything else from the persons, what sort of follow-up do the police do? And yes, there are other avenues, but as it stands now, public education, which is about Sissoko and going to the police as the first point of contact to report something. So you're trying to access justice. So therefore, I think that following that, my recommendation would be that we give greater public education then to persons about going to the probation officers and so on. And there has to be some system of follow-up. Like if a young person comes to report an offense, a student, a child, a girl, and you as a police officer hear nothing more from them, there must be some way that some follow-up is done. Because at the end of the day, you don't know when that person leaves if they left not feeling safe, having started to report it. So therefore, there must be some work at going back and trying to make people feel safe and letting them know that, listen, your issue that you started to report is important to us, and therefore we're coming to do some follow-up.
Thank you.
That I believe is important.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kamisha. And now we have two persons here. I'd invite your comments or questions.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Capleton Winter. I'm a professional jockey for about 20 years. I have a question to ask Ms. Claudette Thompson. It's pertaining to, she was talking about jury and the court system. I want to ask her, what is the process of selecting a credible juror, and how do the public knows what this person, if this person is credible enough for such a trial?
Thank you very much. I'll take one more question before.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I am Shaquani McKenzie from the Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network. I would like to thank Ms. Claudette Brown for her comments earlier. And just to extend a question to Ms. Thompson. I was right? Okay.
That's fine, that's fine.
Okay, how do I put this? When we go to the police, is there a particular unit that a victim can go to feel safe? Because, I mean, depending on what has happened to this person, she's just going to, or he is not going to want to just walk into a police station and go, I was raped. It's a very sensitive topic, especially for a female, especially for a male, especially if it's a child, to just walk into any person and just say, you know, I was harmed in this particular way. So is there a particular unit one can go to? And how do we find these counselors or people to escort us? Because I don't even know the system that well to say, you know, for people like me who don't know the system, where can I go to get this information to say, I need such and such to escort me to this place because, you know, the police may not respond to me the way I want?
Thank you very much. I think that will be the last question in this segment. And I would now ask Claudette Thompson to respond, but I'd also invite Faith and Noel to make a comment, because I know you're very knowledgeable about these issues as well. So we start with you, Claudette.
I'll address the first question first about the credibility of jurors. Jurors are pulled from the voters list. So their names are selected randomly from the voters list. And then summonses are prepared, they're served, and they're invited. The summons is really an invitation to come to court and serve as a juror. You want to know how is it we're assured that they're credible? Well, the system is based on the accused person being tried by his peer. That's really what it is. And I suppose that is where the answer where credibility is concerned comes in, because you're really supposed to be tried by any ordinary Jamaican person. Not the person doesn't have it, isn't expected to have any special knowledge about any special area. They're certainly not expected to be lawyers. These are ordinary Jamaicans. The issues are supposed to be communicated to you in an ordinary way. That's during the course of the trial. And you are given instructions. Well, the prosecutor will make an address to you. The defense attorney will make an address to you. Those are closing speeches. The judge will give directions, help you to arrive at the decision that you're supposed to arrive at. And then jurors, whether it's 7 of you or 12 of you, if it's a murder case or treason, 12 of you will try the case. Any other type of offense will be tried by 7 ordinary Jamaicans, and that is how they are described. When jurors' names are called in court, John Brown, carpenter; Mary Jane, teacher; Louise Ellis, nurse. When a panel has been chosen, the lawyers sit there and they get to decide, do I keep this one? Do I reject this one? And I'm sure you would have seen it, whether on American TV or BBC, where persons can be challenged, and then you're left with either 7 or 12. But to answer your question, where credibility is concerned, it really is a matter of the attorneys trying the case, just looking at you, having heard your name, having heard your profession or skill or job that you perform on a regular basis, and determining whether you're suited to try this kind of case. It's nothing like the American system where you get to delve into people's backgrounds and know what they had for dinner yesterday and who they're married to and how much money they have in their bank account. We really only know that you are John Brown and you're a teacher, and you must be living in the parish of Kingston for you to have been called to try a case in Kingston.
Thank you. I think there's also the question there, though, of whether police should have some follow-up mechanism when somebody even has an incomplete report, and also the question of things to make people who want to make reports feel safe. I don't know if Faith wants to take. Okay.
I can't speak specifically to the system in terms of what's happening with the police, and I understand the concerns that are being expressed by these ladies, and that is those are concerns that have come up before, and where we have been trying to work with the police, I know as a bureau and other women's group, to educate and sensitize them about the sensitivity of these issues where women are concerned. I'm sorry that nobody's here really from the police and Sissoko, because they maybe could speak more definitively to what takes place there. But my understanding is that there are police officers and female officers that are specifically trained, and sensitized to deal with these sensitive cases. What I would want to say, I know maybe in some of the rural areas, I'm not sure if they have, they do. They still have Sissoko and staff there. But what I would want to say too is that training and education, public education, is an ongoing thing. It's not just a one-stop or a one-off thing, because what you have to understand is that there are new recruits coming into the police force every day. The police are also products of the society as well, and they have the same culture like what we have, as the general public. And so training again, we had a session today dealing with that. Training and education is important. I know Women Inc. have been working with the police too, So that is something, again, I think that we will have to revisit and see how we can strengthen our efforts and our initiatives in that regard. So I understand the concern, and on the other hand, again, as the other young lady mentioned, we maybe need to, as I say, do more in terms of public educations. I don't know how, but we will have to see how we can pool our resources together and work together as stakeholders to see how we can get the information out, because we realize that there's an information deficit, and many persons still do not know exactly how to go about this. Yes. In terms of support too, I know that the victim support does some level of support, with the victims, and so if persons know exactly where to go, individuals have come, I know, to the Bureau of Women's Affairs. We have social workers there, and when they do come, we try to direct them to the services. As to, and I take the point that the young lady made, how does follow-up take place in terms of when somebody go, as I said, victim support is there too, but I don't know what happens inside for the police, and I know that they themselves are also faced with resource constraint.
Yes.
And so in terms of that type of follow-up, I'm not sure if they would be able to do that. But these are things that we can look
Well,
into.
thanks very much, but I think that is actually a policy suggestion, that we already, I think, can say we have captured from the floor,
Yes.
that there should be such a mechanism. Yes, Claude, and then I'll give the last word in this segment to Noel.
Right, and there was also a question about whether there's a special unit
Right.
and a private place
Yes.
for the reporting of these types of offenses. Well, Sissoka is that special unit, and under normal circumstances, when somebody goes to the police station to report that type of offense, the police officer on duty would normally direct you to Sissoka. And in most cases, in fact, I'm prepared to say in all cases, the Sissoka office, well, Sissoka has an office, and it is usually a private place. In some parishes, I know, in St. Anne, Sissoka office is a separate building, some distance away from the police station. And so you're taken to that special office, and that is where your statement is recorded. As I said earlier, in Kingston, at the Sissoka office, you're actually examined by the doctor. After or before your statement is taken, you're taken to the hospital for treatment.
I thank the United Nations Population Fund and the Child Development Agency for this opportunity. Sadly, this forum comes at a time when some of the most brutal and glaring acts of sexual violence against women and children are still fresh in our minds. All of us have been shaken by the recent media reports of the heartless acts committed against even an 8-year-old girl, as well as countless others around the island. As children living in the Jamaican society, my friends and I continue to be concerned about our safety and that of other boys and girls. While boys are now not spared the pain and shame of sexual violence, girls are still the prime targets of these attacks. The Office of the Children's Registry reports that over the last 4 years, it has received over 7,200 reports of sexual abuse against children. Of that number, 429 were boys, while some 6,789 were girls. Furthermore, the many threats that children face include issues such as human trafficking, where many girls are sold as sex slaves, and the cybercrimes, as we saw with the man recently being charged for blackmailing women after hacking into their email accounts. Jamaica signed the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1991 as a commitment to upholding some 54 basic human rights of all children. Article 19 of the UN Convention states that children have the right to be protected from all forms of violence, while Article 34 outlines that children are to be protected from all forms of sexual exploitation. Article 35 underscores the need for children to be protected from abduction, sale, and trafficking. The government of Jamaica passed the Child Care and Protection Act in 2004 to enforce the rights of children under the convention. Furthermore, the government passed legislation such as the Sexual Offences Act, the Trafficking in Persons Act, the Cybercrimes Act, and others geared at protecting children from sexual exploitation. Under the Sexual Offences Act, maximum penalty for sexual intercourse with a child under 16 is life imprisonment. And I know there is much discussion about whether the penalties are harsh enough. It is possible that harsher penalties could help to reduce crime, but that alone will not change the situation in our country. We have to ensure that we change the negative attitudes that exist. I have very often heard Minister Hanno talk about the need to change the culture of abuse and sexual violence. I agree. Ending impunity for sexual violence will only happen when hearts and minds change, when society stops seeing women and girls as sex objects. There needs to be a serious effort to change the culture that exposes us children to too much sex and violence in our music. Just as important is the need for the culture of silence to be broken. Everyone must speak up. Let us speak for those who do not have a voice. It is my hope that at the end of this forum, all of us will have a new commitment to doing our part to build a safer society for all. Thank you.
I live in Jamaica, the land of wood and water. My country has some of the best music. Our country has some of the best athletes anybody have ever seen. So you would think I would have something to be proud of. So you think I should have something to be proud of? What would it take for you to share this? 4 women and an 8-year-old.
2 dead 15-year-old boys in the streets.
There were 748 incidents of rape last year. That is equivalent to 62 a month, 16 a week.
2 women a day.
So you think I have something to be proud of? When a girl said no, she means no.
Yo, man no force woman for do what them want do.
I respect my woman. When a woman say no, she mean no. So you know what I mean? When a girl say no, she mean no.
She don't mean continue, see?
Really? Tory. We protect our children. We love and care for them. We have a mother. I have a sister.
We have a daughter.
Friend. No. What would it take for you? What would it take for you to share this? To share this. How can you sleep knowing you might be the next victim? The time is here. And the time is now. Spread the message. End violence now against women. Real man no rape. So share this. I is a Jamaican man. I am a Jamaican man. I am a Jamaican man.
I am a Jamaican man.
I am a Jamaican man. And I don't support no farmer rape. So share this. Share this. Share this. Share this. Share this. So share this. Share this.
Artistic creations. You know, nobody called them up and said, you need to do this thing. They thought they needed to do this thing. And that's what today's forum is about. Where we are, what we know, who we're connected to. How do we use that to make a difference to the issue that we have brought to the table? How do we talk about it? Yes, recognizing duties of others and requiring duty bearers to do what's required. But knowing that we are each one of us, and all of us, duty bearers. So we come now to the final segment of our forum this evening. And here we're to try to craft a way forward in respect of ending impunity and for sexual violence in particular. And looking at that at the level of government, and we have heard some thoughts already, civil society, and at the individual level and the community level. And we have heard little bits on that. Notes, the forum is being recorded, so your thoughts will be reviewed later on, and there will be a policy document coming out, and information will be shared appropriately. So it's very important, and there are a number of people here who may not consider themselves experts. But as you saw from the young men on the video, if you're alive, you're an expert. especially an expert on what you can do. And that's really where I'd like to focus this part of the discussion on what I can do as myself, my family, my community, my work group, my service club, etc. Dr. Crawford Brown.
I was in Rochester, New York, looking at best practice models at the interagency level, and it segues from the previous segment, which spoke to the fear that some people felt about the agencies that they reported to. I was training some social workers there in the Department of Children and Families, and it speaks to the need, it seems to me, for us to have standardized protocols for our agencies as to what to do, who does what, when do you do it, and to have these standardized protocols documented in such a way that the Department of Public Prosecution knows what CDA is doing. CDA documents their protocols for the social workers, and they actually have 15 manuals for each of the agencies dealing with child abuse. And until we get to a stage where everything like that is documented and it's clear, we are going to forever be in the confusion. So I'm suggesting that one of the best practice models we could adopt is setting up standardized protocols as to how to operate at every sector of the system as it relates to sexual violence affecting women and children.
Thank you very much. Floor is open.
I'm Joyce Hewitt, Woman Inc. And my comment is with regard to a report that spoke to the silent witness. And it stated, women's voices are silenced, not only by the discrimination and the violence they face, but also by the failure of the state to protect them, investigate abuses, and overall to punish perpetrators. So it speaks to the impunity, which is one of the issues that was raised tonight, and I heard Dr. Kashyap make some mention about action.
Yes.
And one of the areas in which I think there's action, I'm not quite sure if this still exists, but I have no evidence that it has actually been eliminated. And that is the warning that judges give by virtue of common law with regard to the jurors and asking for corroborated evidence. And this is with a case of rape. One of my colleagues sort of laughed, facetiously to say, we don't ask for corroboration if we report a robbery, but yet we ask for corroboration, and we actually give the jurors a warning that in light of the fact that it is not corroborated and that women and children are known to lie, so that they must take this into consideration during their deliberations. Now, how can we as a nation expect, even when it gets to court, because all too often, of course, the rape victim is not going to go that far, but even to get to that stage and hand it to a juror and a group of jurors and then warn them that it's uncorroborated, and they must take that into consideration. There's action for us to take in that regard.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Robert Footerich, representative of UNICEF. One of the questions I have, and a course of action perhaps follows along with that, and which is the Evidence Act, the amendment to the Evidence Act. One of the serious issues that children are faced with is this Evidence Act, which states that the accuser has a right to face the accused, and the accused person has a right to face the accuser. Now, a child who's been raped goes into the court, and their testimony has to be given in person, and there's no allowance for a videotaped testimony. I think this is a source of action, to call upon our parliamentarians and everyone else who's making the laws to remedy this situation. I've been here for 3.5 years. We've been hearing soon come, soon come, soon come, and yet nothing has happened. It's now sitting at a point where it's almost ready, and we've heard that from the Ministry of Justice. Almost. How long do we have to wait for this to be remedied? And I would like to put this in the notes as a call for action to really look at the Evidence Act and to look at how we're protecting the child witness.
My question is for the OCR, Mr. Smith. Does your agency advocate with the ministry to teach in a systematic way about child abuse and educating children about the Child Act? Because we speak a lot about public education, but the Ministry of Education has a role to play in the psyche that perpetuates our culture. And do you advocate for a permanent role in the curriculum to talk about these things so that students feel empowered and not waiting until something pops up on the TV for 2 weeks and then disappears? I think it's really important that children not only learn about their sexuality in terms of reproduction, but all the other things that comes along with it, and that there's a permanent place in our curriculum so that we do not only affect people who are older, but the future generations to come. I think it's not only about public education, but in a systematic and specific way we need to address this problem.
Thank you so much.
My name is Angela Stennett, and I've been an educator for the past 31 years. To respond to that question, indeed, there is such a program. The Home Family Life Education Program is presently in the schools. And it's seeking to address the concerns you have. My question, however, is well, it's a comment more than a question, because in pointing the way forward, yes, education, I'm thinking, is extremely important, but I think we better iron out first the contradictions in our society. For example, a girl at age 12 plus, 13 for example, who goes into the police station and she reports that she had been sexually molested, she's a victim. The girl who delivers a baby in the hospital, age 13, she becomes a statistic. That's where it stops. There is obvious confusion among our young people as to whether or not they are indeed rape victims, because we respond to the situations differently. We have quite a number of young girls who are having children, and we walk by and we say nothing at all about it. Indeed, we had an unfortunate occasion where one young lady at age 15 gave birth to the first baby born in a particular year, and there she was on the front page of the newspaper being given a basket, and we just accepted it. Now, when is the child being sexually exploited? When she reports it or when she has a baby? We need to iron out the contradictions and say the same thing and respond the same way all the time, consistently.
Okay. I'm going to invite Greig to respond to that pointed question. After he speaks, I would love to have people stand and speak of a commitment they might consider making as an individual or through their organization or through their community, so that we leave with us having done some personal reflection and, if possible, making a statement about something we would like to do.
The Office of the Children's Registry, we have not yet have formal dialogue with the Ministry of Education. However, we have been initially taking up the appointment as the registrar. I've started discussion with the teachers' colleges. And so I've been to majority of the teachers' colleges in which we want to get the educators before they're out. What we have been doing also, we have been to Claremont, based on the article read, the 11-year-old. We'll be going into Arun Point on the 25th of this month. And also with the commitment of the minister, she had asked that the OCR that we start doing been more proactive, and so what we'll be doing is some school tours by going into the school, not only community consultations, but what we want to do is to go inside the school, have dialogue with the children. So do take the comment that we'll have, probably that's something that I can discuss with my managers, to have formal discussion with the Ministry of Education to see how best we can have that integrated. But we do encourage persons who are here that if you have PTs at school, invite us so that we can be part of it, so that we can also come in, educate the children and also the teachers and community members. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to make a comment, and then of course I will make a commitment here because it is important. You know, about 8 months ago, one of the UN agencies launched the first Caribbean Human Development Report. The report was on citizen security. It was UNDP that launched it in Trinidad and Tobago, and it was recently launched again in Guyana. The reason I'm mentioning it, because a couple of observations that come directly from there are very relevant to the discussion that we are is happening here. One was, I must congratulate Geeta and her unit and the Population Fund for putting up this public dialogue, because this is exactly what it was recommending, that there is a need for a national reflection on the issue of violence, especially sexual violence against girls, adolescents, and women. And when you urge all communities, private sector, to church group, religious groups, to stand up and say, we will not tolerate this, this will not happen. And then again, there were recommendations on what governments could do, investing more in units that address those gender-based violence in a manner that we come up with solutions. And they also gave cases of successful practices, both from Trinidad and also from some parts of Latin America, particularly El Salvador, as to what kind of laws, if implemented, would make some sense. Underlying all this is a very important issue, and that's of data. That, you know, all the time that we are working, including in the preparation of the report, if you were truly going to examine the data, that would raise a number of questions. And one of the laws in Trinidad does exactly that. At any time such incident happens, that needs to be recorded and reported, because then it falls within the realm of the community and how we move ahead with it. Having said that, what I would like to make a commitment is on behalf of the United Nations, that this is a priority for us, that this is one area where all of us will work together, and I can assure you that this would not only happen at the country level here, but where I have assurance from our development group, where our regional directors sit in Panama as the headquarters of that, and they have offered all their support in helping us come to a strategy along with the government, along with other stakeholders, and of course engaging all of you through public dialogues, and then coming up with a solution so we can start making some progress soon, and absolutely look forward to a country that we say it will be a place for us to live, work, and raise families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Arun Kashyap, the resident coordinator of the UN system in Jamaica, has made a commitment about how the UN system in Jamaica and potentially across the region will keep this issue on the front burner and support efforts related to breaking the impunity in this area. Thank you very much. There is someone up there, and then I'll come to you. Please
Good
go
evening,
ahead.
ladies and gentlemen. My name is Candace Livermore. I work with Jamaica Aid Support for Life. The reality is, everything feels very mass. Yeah. Everything is above the head of the regular citizen. And we'll all leave here, and I would know still, how do I respond if, as a person, my rights have been violated, I'm suffering sexual abuse, what do I take, who do I go to? Because right now we're talking a lot about policies and laws and the strategic plans and all of that. All of that is very good for the technical mind. But the reality is that does not relate to the citizens of this country. We have to start working ground up. We are too much on the top in Kingston, national level, and we ignore what is happening on the ground. And some things just have to come bottom up. Everything is wrong with the culture. All of a sudden we are seeing that our socialization, things are wrong with it. Well, socialization will not take place while ministers are in parliament, or while we are writing policy documents, or all of these fabulous things that we're talking about. However, understanding the problem, at Jamaica AIDS Support for Life, I want to pledge our continued commitment to this cause of breaking the silence around gender-based violence, sexual violence, violence against women and girls. And we'll still stand with our clients, persons who are infected and affected by HIV/AIDS, to offer all the support services that we can by being there with the person on the ground, treading the mill, ensuring that the agencies do respond to us whether they want to or not, and ensuring that each person gets justice. Because the reality is, if we don't get justice, they're going to take their justice. And we are seeing very much that in our society now. So I pledge our continued commitment. UN Women has been great to us. We have empowered over 60 women who are infected and affected by HIV/AIDS, who we hope more persons will come out when we invite you to the dialogues where women want to share and to talk and to see how we can systematically address these issues, as well as on the ground address them, so that persons can feel that they too are entitled to what this country has to offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Randy McLaren, a Youth Ambassador for Culture and Vulnerable Youth. Also here representing ICANN and Artistic Creations, the group that produced the video. Thank you. The question is being asked, what do we do? What do we commit to as individuals, as organizations? Now, as young persons, as you saw in the video, a group of young men, a group of young actors, some of us actors, I'm a dub poet, writers, storytellers, the works. Now, as was mentioned just now, we need to start simplifying information. We have a lot of policy documents, a lot of things that are indeed important, but young people need to understand these documents, right? And so what we're interested in, if we're given the proper resources, our thing is to get it to the young people. Use up the social media, use the platforms that they're engaged in. But not only the social media, how about if we take the messages to them, yeah, in their spaces, in their communities, on the sidewalk, yeah? And so we're interested in that, right? And it has been started. That video wasn't the first video that has been done, and it certainly will not be the last, because we will be continuing. But having said that, that will help significantly in terms of public education, getting information out there, joining with the HFLE program as well, because sometimes the ways that we use to, disseminate information is perhaps not the best. And so I'm suggesting again that we are a creative people. And so if we want to reach the young people, there's no two ways about it. We have to be creative. We are a creative people by nature. Use up the creative talents, the dub poetry, the acting skills. Let us be creative in how we get the information out to them. And I guarantee you that the information will be digested.
We have seen you and we have heard you.
Efficacy.
We believe you.
Want to mention also, we've left it out. I'm happy that this initiative has been started. But we need to bring into the whole discussion the young ladies, the girls who are incarcerated. We must not leave them out.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Geeta Green. I work with the Office of the Children's Registry. I wish to make a comment as it regards to the commitment that I would like each person at this setting to leave here with. Whether you are a parent, a teacher, a friend, a mother to be, I see some expecting mothers here. And as I heard earlier, we really need to break it down. We need, as parents, to make the commitment that my child will be a priority in my home, that I will open the lines of communication, help my child to feel loved and special, so that when the gentleman or the woman on the street approaches him or her and say, baby, I love you. Mommy don't love you, but I can give you what your mom is not giving you. that child will not be left susceptible to sex predators and other persons who perpetrate various acts of violence against our children. It is important for parents to establish a loving and a caring environment, to establish boundaries. You will not leave the house in a mini skirt. You will not leave the house in a belly skin, exposing yourself. It is important for the parent to be the disciplinarian, but to do it in love, to do it with communication with the child. Children are seen as persons who we give rights to, as opposed to children who are born with rights. And it is something that the OCR has been working with children all across this island. We've been speaking with parents and teachers and other persons in the communities, helping them to understand what really is abuse. We've been hearing the terms, but they don't realize that when I say to the child that you're good for nothing, that is a form of emotional abuse to that child.
Well, thank you for the challenge, because I think this is, if I choose to be an adult and have some contact with children, what standards do I determine for myself and commit to live up to? So I'm coming back.
Yes, good evening. My name is Corey Russell Prince, and I'm a Community Development Officer with the Social Development Commission. I'm also speaking on behalf of the Child Sexual Abuse Awareness and Prevention Project, which emanated out of the United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. In terms of the public awareness program, I'd also like to suggest to support what's happening in the schools and the social media programs. Through UNPF, through CDA, you could also liaise with the various church umbrella groups, whereas you can maybe do workshops with the leaders in the church and have it disseminated. The church is, without a doubt, the single most pervasive influence in communities. You can also look at organizations, youth organizations like Boys Brigade, the Scouts, the various uniform groups. There are so many of them. Not all of them have access to social media. There are some in rural areas that don't have a phone.
Do you have a commitment around that?
My commitment, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Social Development Commission, but I'll speak on behalf of myself. If I am included in any of these workshops, maybe trainer programs, I'll be glad to train my staff members. I'll be glad to go out and do it with the community groups. That's my personal commitment.
Thank you.
I can also make that a commitment of the CSA program, the Child Sexual Awareness Abuse.
Thank you very much for that intervention. Thank you very much.
My name is Linton Smith. I'm from the Delta Learning System. I do believe that the message, the double standards that we're having, really we need to look at that. We cannot be changing our men's behavior if we still have at all levels in the society a feeling that more man need to have more gal or more woman. We need to, Mr. Stennett, who spoke earlier, spoke of this young man who had one baby mother and there was another girl who wanted it. I think the message that we need, and I'll be willing to be part of any message that is going out there for our young men, to just look at what is happening in Jamaica. Anyone who can afford it has 0, 1, or 2 children. Those who can't afford it have 6, 7, 8, and 9. We have to get that message out there that that is part of our biggest problem, our population, what we really have. So when the stress comes in the home, parents don't know where children are because there are just really too many. We need to look at that aspect of our family life. Yes, my commitment is to talk about that, is to carry that message and to be like my friend here, any forum that will need that kind of father figure. I rear 4 girls of my own to really sit and work through. Thank you very much.
All right. Good evening again, everybody. So earlier was my personal intervention. I'm also youth information specialist with the National Center for Youth Development. And I'm very happy that Randy raised the question about how our youth being involved. And it's important that we understand that young persons have to be engaged in any attempts to end gender-based violence in Jamaica. And so November is Youth Month. So the question I have for the agencies that are here is, have you been engaging youth? How many of you have young persons actively serving on your boards? Not just in name, and not just them coming and sitting, but actively serving on your boards? And thank you for the support on that. And are you having the young persons actively engaging other young persons? Personally, I was very happy to hear the member from the Child Advisory Board today. And I don't know if many of you picked up, but yes, we had an excellent panel. However, there was one person that mentioned cyber crimes as a part of gender-based violence, and that was coming from the young person. And I believe that she must truly be commended for identifying that this evening. So the commitment of the National Center for Youth Development for Youth Month is to really engage young persons. And as an agency of the Ministry of Youth and Culture, they've been partnering with the Child Development Agency to have some town hall meetings in the month of November. November is Youth Month, and the theme this year is Youth on a Mission. And I have to encourage everybody to join on that mission. And they will be articulating their mission throughout the period. But obviously one of them is going to focus on ending gender-based violence and addressing the spike in rapes and sexual offenses against women. Another hat that I wear is, and this is my personal commitment, is Miss Jamaica Festival Queen 2012. And thank you very much. And if we're talking about culture, and I'm supposed to be a cultural ambassador and cultural change, this is something that I will personally commit to lending my services to. And Randy, if you want another voice on the Creative Voices, I will come and join along. So I think it's commendable too that you have a group of young persons, myself included, who are willing to lend their services and lend their voices to engage in other young persons, discussing it and making suggestions. And I have to commend you for having this today and listening to the voices.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nico Tyndale. I'm focal point to the UNFPA Youth Advisory Group. I just want to add one thing. We need not to fool ourselves. We do have youth who are bullying youth out there. And we have to also make it known that we need to engage these other set of subset youth who are challenged in various ways as relates to either sexual violences, crimes as well, because the reality is these youth need to be engaged as it relates on a different level. They are treated differently and most times are outcasts of society, and we have to find ways of addressing these issues. As part of my personal commitment through the UNFPA and other agencies that I've been working with is to continue to engage these youth in all the activities that I've been engaging in for the last 3 years as a means of an intervention to address some of the challenges and make referrals that will help the situation, because generally you make referrals and then they're stuck in a system where no one has contacted them, no one is willing to engage them because of various challenges.
Good evening. Allow me to first speak not as a Jamaican, but I think an honorary Jamaican, having lived here in my former life and having taught at Jamaica College. So I feel, and I love Jamaica and I feel an allegiance to Jamaica. So I think I want to plug the issue of prevention. And in terms of your own commitment, your own, whether it's individual or organizational commitment, to please put some emphasis on prevention. I guess sometimes we think that prevention is more expensive than cure, but perhaps in the short term, it may be a good way for us to proceed. Now, as a member of the staff of UNFPA, and I think I have my director's permission, I want to commit to the fact that UNFPA over the past year and a half or so developed a strategy to address and prevent sexual violence. And my commitment on behalf of UNFPA is to share that strategy with any organization, any civil society group. We've already shared it with the Bureau, and my director this morning shared it with the minister, and any individual. And I think that I also heard the speaker, the creative arts person, talked about reaching and making things simple and easier to respond to the general public, to everyone. And so I think another commitment is for us to try and simplify the strategy as well to make sure it can be more accessible. So that's my commitment.
Thank you very much.
And Geeta, can I get your yes to that?
Pleasant good evening, everyone. Lana Finnegan from Sistine Theatre Collective. Candice and I can't endorse you anymore. Sistine, for the past 35 years, I've been doing this. And working with inner city communities. And we talk about working with inner city communities, using the performing arts as a tool to address social issues. And I'm committing Sistine to continue the process. Right now we're in Waterhouse, Jewsland, and Tower Hill, and working on prevention, looking at sexual violence. But I want to talk to somebody about, I hear talking about going out road naked. I'm a woman. I need to walk anyhow, anywhere, anytime, anyhow. That is my right. Nobody needs to take that away from me. Right? The other issue I have is, I hear somebody talk about it, the double standard we have in society. The church says something else, and somebody says something else, and the politician says something else. We need to come together as a country, because if we don't, there's a saying that my great Cuban grandmother always said, dog, nyam, with supper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lana.
Charles Harvey. I'm founding member, one of the founding members of Fathers Inc. And I'm also a radio presenter at Roots. This morning I came up with, I realized the situation with children. I also bring up that issue about child abuse. But what we must always know is that in the communities there's a lot of semi-literate people, whether it be male or female, and also parents as well, who doesn't know the ethics or rights of sometimes their own child. Now, the whole problems always come from the garrison, because the different mindset and the different culture is somewhat is different. And a lot of persons may talk a lot of stuff, but when you get in the garrison community or in the community, there's a difference. Because as a single parent like myself, who raised 3 daughters there, it is very difficult when you have people who doesn't think your way as a parent with responsibility. So in order to get people to be a part of that, we have to do most of our advocate, most of our network within the garrison communities. And we can't fool ourselves when it comes to issues, because these communities are loaded with these issues and concerns. Now, men have been getting a lot of bashes over the years, and we feel as a male group we can do the best what we can do for men when it comes to highlighting some of the issues that affect them, and even the females. A lot of workshops and our NGOs, non-government organizations need help when it comes to men group like Fathers Inc. Because we have a perfect lecture that we do for kids, parents, whether it be male or female, and the parents. And I think we're overlooking the fact that we are good advocates for men and can impart positive stuff for men, because these men are losing their ethics in all aspects. And in order to get back that together, we need to go on the drive, get in the communities, and get these programs in the communities, because the problems exist mostly in the garrison community, and it seems to shun away from the garrison at times, and not looking deeply in some of the economical concerns that affects parents, affects even some of these child. Because as a single parent, I tried my best with my one child. Presently now, out of the 3 I have, but most of them are out of the community. One in particular is there, and it's very difficult for that child, because of the peers, to grasp the type of ethical value that I want her to grasp. When you have the 5, 6 neighbors whose child is totally different from mine, who already bust out to the society, who are willing to do anything derogative in that sense. So we need to look at the parents who are on this level, who cannot find it, who cannot find the food on the table, and their daughters is there left to sieve for some food somewhere else. So that's another concern. And even a parent who can find it, and the next girl child who can't find it, they're going to lead them in the thing. So the whole idea of mentorship, culture, or we integrate our child in the garrison. There's no resources in there for them to motivate themselves.
Charles,
everything is uptown.
Thank you very much for flagging the issue, that there are some real survival needs that may be part of the array of problems around this issue, but also committing that your organization will focus on men and to help men address these issues more effectively going forward. So let me take this opportunity to say, by your participation, you have demonstrated that this forum was needed. In fact, you have demonstrated that more events like this and other types of events are badly needed. At the Dispute Resolution Foundation, we have a program, School Suspension Intervention Program, supported by UNICEF. And in that program, we have seen a number of young people who we have been able to assist through referrals to the appropriate agencies in relation to their own fear of accessing. I want to make a personal commitment, though, beyond the work of the organization in the community and in the schools, that when something happens, that I'm going to be a voice of reason and support, that I will use my platform to ensure that this issue is, I'm not going to say in every public presentation, but as near as makes no difference. So that every time I speak or write, I will try to find a way to incorporate this issue in what I do in the public domain. And that's a commitment I make today on this matter. But backing that commitment is also a commitment to learn more and to know more so that I can be accurate and effective in helping to push this message forward. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your attention. And I now hand over to Althea Buchanan.
Thank you very much, Donna. I would like to just say thanks to Donna for anchoring this evening for us, and thank you so much for your participation. At this time, I'm just going to turn over to Melissa McNeil Barrett, our assistant rep, who will just do the official thank you.
Thank you very much, Althea. She has already graciously thanked Donna, thanked our panelists, our very distinguished panelists who are sitting here this evening. We want to thank as well our resource panelists who provided so much information and clarification on the various questions. We want to thank you, the audience, for coming out this evening. The numbers alone showed us the great interest in the discussion, in the issues being discussed, and particularly since it was at short notice, because I know many people got the information maybe a little later in the game. So we're very pleased to see the turnout this evening, and we're very happy at the way in which the discussions unfolded and how persons were very engaged. We are also very pleased to hear the suggestions that have been coming out, because I think some of them have been, all of them have been very informative, all of them are very useful. I know Mrs. Webster perhaps could also elaborate on meetings that have been taking place across the government and in collaboration with NGOs and the various sectors to look at this problem and look at ways of effectively addressing sexual violence, not only among our girls and women, but certainly among our boys, because as we all acknowledge and understand that it's a problem that affects all of us, and it's not just limited to women and girls. So as we move forward, certainly we will document all of the comments and the inputs that have come out of this session. And please don't leave without signing the registration sheets and leaving your contact information so that we can share with you the consolidation of what has come out of this meeting, but certainly that it will provide inputs for us as we move forward in terms of continuing not only the dialogue, but moving to action. And I think it was important, the point about the community interventions, because that is in fact on our agenda in terms of working at the level of the community, not just leaving the dialogue at the level of policy and just, you know, some people tend to think of it as a talk shop, but certainly what we will be doing is working in the communities collectively with our other UN agencies. You heard from our resident coordinator that is a commitment in the UN system, and we have many of our heads of agencies represented here. We have UNAIDS, you heard from UNICEF. We have UNDP. We have our PAHO, head of agency here. And we have UNESCO was also here. So we have I think all our UN agencies were represented this evening, if not most of them. And so it's a commitment that we have that we will continue to work around this issue jointly, and that we will support the efforts of the government, the national partners, and at the community level to ensure that we can effectively address this problem as we move forward. So thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for spending the evening with us, and we thank you for all your very constructive comments and inputs. And then we invite you to join us downstairs for some refreshments, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue and the action as we move forward. Thank you.